So there's a lot of garbage in that book, right? A lot of gossip that's not true.
We never know if there's not a lot of garbage that's not true because, once again,
or unsubstantiated accusations.
Right now in the world, this is what we got. Welcome to The Date.
Be careful out there.
Oh, are you gonna get in trouble again?
That arm is unstable.
Oh,
Not sure how long it's gonna
watch
hold.
out! Watch out!
There's warning lights everywhere.
Watch out!
Abort! We lost Tom. Look out. It's out of control. Are you okay?
I got bored of it, so I thought I'd add a few sound effects.
Well, thanks for the sound effects. This is The Date. This is your rock right here. We also happen to have some company tonight, which is they're saying they're going to go Picasso with a J. And of course, once again, you can always catch me on Getter, because this is where I go these days to get myself some proper information as to what's going on. Of course, this is a little bit of a continuation of the post. B and Cause. Of course, we had the previous guest, Arthur Nom de Plume. Thank you for tuning in. And of course, once again, you can also give a thumbs up, like, subscribe, share. And if you ever want to put in some coin, yeah, you can definitely go to what we call Buy Me Coffee. What were you going to say? Jay, our guest.
The J's in the middle.
Jay's in the middle.
Sometimes
for Picasso.
It's at the end, but it's in the middle this time.
So that's Picasso with J.
That's right, in the middle.
So like Picasso.
Well, it's a silent J, so you can't hear.
So let's see.
It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm glad, because we are doing this, as we know, semi-live, and it's kind of a new thing I'm trying right now. And, just kind of keep abreast. But there are some articles I did want to cover. Because I am quite interested to know. Two things are happening. They say, when I say they, our great government health system, we have what was known as medical assisted demise. And there was an article coming up, so now I'm going to just pull this up right here. Well, they have it in a few languages. Let's see. Just bear with me. Let's share this screen here. So Canada's medical assistance in dying Maid law. So this is a law. Now they're actually going to push this law out. Please note that the eligibility date for persons suffering solely from mental illness is March 17th, 2024. So that eligibility for folks with suffering mental illness is around this time next year, actually, which is I find very interesting. So this is something that's actually been a trigger for most folks. And at the same time, the only reason why I'm bringing this up is because we also have, at least in the news, there was some mention that we have some pretty interesting number of donations, as well as donations in need. But these are folks waiting for transplants, but we are getting them. So now there is some discussion that, at least what I'm hearing, I'm reading, along with what's happening with this assistance, some of the organs can be used from this, or there's some veterans who have launched even some complaints that if they were going to take this, they could donate their organs, right? And that caused some type of a big stink, in the sense that, well, folks are starting to ask questions about the ethics here. So are people going to go and do this Maid assistance, dealing with maybe probable problems that could probably be resolved by what was the actual medical health and psychiatric industry, which it was established at least into the next this 20th century with what we expected better practices, which of course before practices were very unethical if you're considering lobotomies and brain shocks, right? Electroshocks. But now they're cutting to the chase. Now we got Maid. If you want to take another out or another remedy to psychiatric turmoil, and you can donate your organs to somebody who most, unfortunately, in the circumstances, but fortunately for them, would need it. So, what do you think, Picasso with a J, about what's going on with organ transplants and medical assisted death?
Well, so we're coming into this topic cold. I didn't research it. I don't know how much you've researched this.
Yeah.
I remember about a month and a half ago, there was a fellow who's poor, and he was about to do Maid, simply because he didn't want to be homeless and depressed at the same time. Do you know whatever happened to him? You would think that he'd be dead by now, right?
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I didn't research it, but it did touch my life personally, in that a friend of mine, his father, was just unhappy, probably a long time alcoholic, and he had assisted suicide this summer, I believe.
Right.
Much to the objection of his son. His son just felt cheated out of having a father, but I only found out accidentally about this.
So you feel it's fair? I mean,
I don't
even
know what
then, huh?
Actually, I'm not even aware of how much public debate, if any, that we've had over this. And
Like if we look here, okay, so
I am surprised Canada's a leader in this.
well, this is what mainstream news is even saying. Canada performing more organ transplants from Maid donors than any country in the world. So let's take a quick, once again, this is fair use under the FBI guidelines, but even just before we take a look, I'm just going to read here. A growing number of patients who request medical assistance in dying are asking to donate their organs for transplant, says an international review that found that Canada is performing the most organ transplants from Maid patients among the 4 countries studied that offer this practice. So I'm not going to get into reading it all.
Wait, hold on a second.
We can cherry pick. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so what are the other countries? Netherlands, Belgium, and Spain are the 4 countries involved, including Canada. And it's where you've got assisted death combined with organ transplants, right? Those are the criteria. So, well, I mean, if you want to start at the beginning, I suppose religion and ethics are issues that we would discuss on this. And then you've got that whole
So what do you mean?
Chinese
Religion?
industry that they're
Okay.
accused of doing.
So tell me about that. Actually, I'll give you the floor on that. But just before, okay, if you want to give me an intro to what's happening, and of course, our guests don't know.
Yeah,
But
no,
our
I
guest
didn't do any
Picasso-
research, but
Picasso with a J is from the land of Japhet. He's Japhet, also AKA part Israelite in the house, AKA what is
that would be
Chinese
you.
or
No,
something?
that would be you.
Well, that's all of us.
No,
but you know,
Picasso, I believe, was Spanish.
well, this show, as you know, we get the best of everybody because right now there's so much, how we say, censorship, whatnot. So my show is to invite the folks that never have the voice. So as we had Nom de Plume, who was your average white guy, right? And everybody loved him. He was like a Masonic guy. And of course today, of course,
I didn't know he was
with
Masonic.
Picasso with a J, almost sounds like it should be Latin, but he's not.
So here's what I'm wondering about the motive of these governments. First of all, it's not the monetization of organ transplants that are at issue. I think it's illegal to overtly pay for transplants. Is that correct in Canada?
It's illegal as far as I understand I mean, if you're getting it from the black market, which I understand that, because we're doing this on the fly, but
Right. So
common
Canada.
sense folks, I'll just throw this point in. Common sense folks like both of us will say, okay, so we're just talking about it like without even the thought, which was just coming to my head about what they're supposed to take, those professionals, right?
Yeah. So we're getting a man on the street opinion. Based
Yeah,
on the idea
definitely, yeah,
that
yeah.
we neither of us
Gorilla.
have researched it.
Yeah.
So
But they did lobotomies first, and now we're not doing lobotomies
You're talking
We're
about
saying-
ages ago. Is that what you're talking about?
maybe even 20 years ago, like really lobotomies
Yeah,
they were
so-
doing it, and brain shocks. Now,
Well, here's
you're
a fun
free-
fact.
if you're saying, and no offense to the world, but the way they used to say it back in the day, if you were crazy, you toughed it out and whatnot. Today, you can say, they're saying by the law, you can get medical assistance to take your life if it's messing you up psychologically, and somehow you can give your organs to people, and somehow this is okay by our legislative, medical, and laws. So you are just to set you up to what you're going to continue on. As far as I know, since we both don't know, we don't do it by the cash. But I have heard if you have enough money,
Did you
they
say
can
patch?
huh?
Patch? We don't do. Oh, by cash.
By cash.
Okay.
Sorry, by money, by actual liquid cash.
Uh-huh.
I believe there's, once again, there's legalities. However, it's not unheard of that, priorities will happen. In Canada, though, if we're following it by the book, it should be by the list, by priority, who comes and gets it next. Now, where the organ is coming from, this is something different. This is where I guess you should talk, because we don't know where the organ. We see here in this article that we're going to look at. We're doing it now. What can you tell me about? Okay, this is happening here now. What was it before?
Well, as a formality, let's state that because of the removal of funds from the people who supported the truckers, all of our opinions are constricted to what we think is allowable and agreeable. So you're not really hearing anybody's opinion. But I do want to state a fun fact. I believe it was 1949. We could check that date as to a Nobel Prize in Medicine being awarded for the lobotomy.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to check Nobel Prize 1949. Now, getting back to the monetization of this, I think it's trivial compared to the savings in healthcare costs, obviously. And then there's the dimension of reduction of suffering. So in the case that I know personally, it's interesting that you have many family members that have little or no say in the decision-making process, right? The son who loses his father, if I'm not mistaken, the father was probably only in his mid-70s, which to me is young enough. The son was, let me guess, he's probably 40-something.
So you're talking
A
about
son
who?
deserves a father.
But you're talking regarding what? You're talking about medical assistance to death here? Like
No,
how
I'm
is that-
saying that when you look at the ethics and the effect on society, you have to look at many dimensions, including who are you harming? So let's say you've got that depressed individual. Number one, you don't know if he were treated properly, that he would still want to end his life.
Correct.
But then you've got the problem of the family that has no say,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're suffering as a result of this new policy, and is that fair to them?
Right.
Do you have a better, stronger, more resilient society? Do you have a more ethical society? And then again, there's the religion. Are we moving away from God by disrespecting the gift of life? So don't pretend to be an expert at any of that. But how about Nobel Prize 2019?
Well, we'll take a look at that in
Sorry,
a second.
29. Okay, sure.
But the thing, just so we don't veer off too far, because, okay, we're going to look into the whole point of lobotomy and whatnot, but there's an extreme here, because even if someone did get a lobotomy, and no matter how many lobotomies someone did get in record, it's still a question of, well, yeah, okay, so today lobotomy is a horror story. Less than a century ago, it was revolutionary fix for misunderstood mental health problems, which is a very good, big, important point to take, even when it comes to what's going on with Maid. So the first lobotomies were performed in the late 1800s by Swiss physician. Okay, and I'm not going to get into reading it, but for people who would be identified schizophrenic, bipolar, and lobotomy truly gained traction starting in 1935, which is one point. Two American scientists removed the frontal lobes of chimpanzees. So that's how they would do it. They would remove, the frontal lobes of your brain, and that would make you really. It would dumb you down. It basically, in general, adjust whatever mood. But I mean, imagine you're taking a piece of your brain out. You're not, getting the benefits of using your full of it. Let's see here. James W. Watts developed the Freeman Watts standard lobotomy, which laid out procedure for how exactly a spatula, right? That's the good old stuff that folks would. Let me see here. I'm trying to do some quick act. Okay, forget that. But the spatula is what you cook with. All right, what you cook with, you scramble some eggs. That's the spatula. So it was to be inserted and manipulated in the brain, basically scrambling your brain like eggs. He didn't have any qualms. Okay, so a physician witnessed Freeman performed a series of lobotomies in the early 50s. So this is just to coincide with what we're going to find out about the Nobel Peace Prize and whatnot, right? So this is the early 50s. So how can a man be relaxed just going blindly into a brain? So this basically ends and talks that he had performed or supervised over 3,500 lobotomies. All right, but that was only a fraction of the total. So that's why numbers, right, in all, more than 50,000 lobotomies. And that's what they're only choosing to tell us, right? Because I'm sure if you consider all the illegalities of all the people who were unjustifiably probably taken away, right? Whether they were color, women, maybe prostitutes, maybe children who were like they probably millions, right? Were performed in the United States between 1949 and 1952. So I'm sure anyone who did that, no matter how much notoriety they got, they're probably burning and maybe in hell. We don't know. The popularity of lobotomy was only encouraged by Higas Monets. The most notable accomplishment in 1949, he shared the Nobel Prize for physiology or medicine for, as the citation put it, his discovery of the therapeutic value of leucotomy. Leucotomy, there you go, in certain psychoses, but that did not mean the procedure, particularly as Freeman practiced it, was safe or even successful. Almost sounds very relevant to what we see happening in the last 3 years. Though many of Freeman's patients showed reduced tension or agitations, others became entirely passive, apathetic, or disinterested in their own life, resulting in the trope of lobotomized people as zombies. Some were reduced to the mental capacity of children, others died. Right? So if they were playing they'd probably bring them down to their 12-year-old selves. There's a few living people who are still from that era because they went on still well into the 80s. Let's take one case here. Like then 12-year-old Howard Dully, who was lobotomized on the order of his stepmother. He wasn't aware of his surgery until decades later. I'll never know what I lost in those 10 minutes with Dr. Freeman and his ice pick, Dully told NPR in 2005. When he was 56, by some miracle, it didn't turn me into a zombie, crushed my spirit. So this basically, and like I was saying, children, women, and so very mentally ill were especially vulnerable to being lobotomized without their knowledge. And this is what, so we could look back and say, and once again, this is because of psychology and something that goes way back, and the medicine of it that goes even further back in times of our great philosophers and whatnot, right? Shows us that a lot of even what we're still curing today, trial and error, I guess if you want to say it, benefit versus the risk, whatever it was. As I want to look up spatula, because this is the instrument that was used, right?
10 minutes.
Right? The spatula. I don't know if this will show up, but this is what was used at the time. So,
That's amazing.
with that being said, Now we know, we answered that question. Now let's get back to the heart of the project here, what we're saying. We're talking about the lobotomy, and we're talking about mental assistance, and how organ donation now is actually working together with assisted demise, if we should. And this is just a quick look at some famous people who have gone through it. Eva Peron, Rosemary Kennedy, and just a quick look as to what happens to a brain when they're going through a lobotomy. Look at that. Look how I actually put an ice pick through it. Look at that. Sad as it is, this is a lobotomy. So, will somebody want to live and be happy after that? That's hard to say. But they would take this thing, pick it right through your eyes, and look, before and after. But let's get back to, once again, the topic at hand, which is what Maid is doing and how, of course, with this medical assistance in taking a life, it appears that, once again, growing number of patients who request medical assistance in dying are asking to donate their organs for transplant. It says an international review that found that Canada is performing the most organ transplants from Maid patients. This is what we got in Canada among the 4 countries studied that offer this practice. So, Picasso with a J, you mentioned that, okay, in Canada, well, it seems that now it's not, you don't have to pay money maybe to get that organ if, God forbid, somebody is chronically ill. And before that, what was it? Because you could either have a lot of money, I gather, we understood that, but where were those organs coming from prior to this? And is it an ethically, under the hypocritical oath, is it really a kosher thing that we're witnessing right now in Canada?
Well, I don't object to organ donations at all. It's the concept of Maid that is, I find offensive. Okay. By the way, the samples of 4 countries renders the headline almost useless, because being the first of 4 is it's just not a big enough sample. I guess it could speak to the generosity of Canadians when they do decide to kill themselves to donate their organs. But I'm wondering if this is a useful video to watch to see if we could.
Yeah, we'll take a
Formulate
look
an
at that because, and here's the thing. Well, while you might reflect that, I'm reflecting and thinking, okay, there might be an ethical, uh, spiritual issue here, because if you're taking the organs from somebody who's, let's say, depending on how they're gonna actually define how mentally ill is ill, to take your life, and you happen to be physically in great shape, which is actually something that, let's say, once again, someone could be schizophrenic and they wouldn't look schizophrenic. Now, if that is the case, would you feel okay with taking, let's say, the lung or the heart of that person who still could survive, per se, and maybe even get the right proper care, which is actually at least it's still for now, every Canadian is entitled to get, right, in order to survive and keep going, whether it be psychotherapy down to actual medication. We're saying, hey, you know what? You just give up on it if you qualify, and give someone your heart. I don't know, God forbid, if anyone is in that situation, how that can even heal that person, how that heart from somebody who wanted to take their life, how could that energy be it? How can even if I'm sure all the narcissists and even the agnostics out there or atheists could say, who don't put God in the equation, could say, hey, it's your body that needs this organ will not reject it. Why? Well, because it's still an organ. Okay, but the person Hey, to make the fair argument, what about people who get in accidents and they donate? Maybe there's nothing to that. But think about it. This is still an act of God. But when you're saying you're giving somebody, and here's my thing about the assisted dying thing, you're giving some fucking idiot who's supposedly took an oath to help you save your life, give you fucking medication for you to fucking take your life. I don't know. I think I'm not comfortable with that still yet because it takes a special kind of person. I still believe doesn't matter. Not judging to say, well, somebody can't be a coroner or an embalmer, but still, the transgression of taking out a life, even then, they can't do it by their own hand. Says something. If they're going to do it by their own hand, yeah, you give them something to do, but then why don't they give them okay, do the homework. Maybe go out and buy the shit instead of having somebody who we're expecting, who the oath is to save, not take away the breath of life. Here, take this, shoot this up. I'll come check on you or drink this. I'll check on you in a few minutes. If you want, I can stick around and see your eyes glare to death. And I'll make sure your liver goes to the best person you get. Like what the fuck? That's pretty weird.
Well,
Take it away.
There are two separate issues that need to be addressed. One is just corruption in and of itself, and the other one is the unforeseen changes in our culture, our society, and our social norms, some of which we can't even foresee. Uh, that's what concerns me the most.
Well, you're saying
We could trivialize life. Like, just imagine the world 50 to 100 years from now, if this becomes routine. Our whole notion of how precious or trivial life is going to be completely different. If people are routinely checking out, if they're a little unhappy, or maybe they're even just tired of life, like my friend's dad. I wish I had visited him on his last week because I mean, out of curiosity, I would have liked to see how much do you have to be suffering to want to kill yourself? Because the last time I met him, he just seemed to be fine. And
right.
also, the objection of his son raises doubts in my mind as to how much suffering the father was going through. But I guess
And that's I believe, a very valid and a hardcore point to bring up because it boils down. And once again, this is not to discount and to give any advice because I'm not no professional. We're not professionals. We're not here, doctors, lawyers, whatnot, to make that fair use for public education in general for the commentary we're doing here. But this is where the argument's going to be. The point being, if we're so nonchalant about it now, even though we see the cruelties of the past, because we said lobotomies were cruel in the beginning, but still, well, for what it was, even though it made life miserable, it didn't kill you. But now, from that to today, where we're like, okay, instead of doing a lobotomy, we'll accept that you're not willing to actually do the work that could help heal you. And thus, if we diagnose you, this is where I'm getting at, it's the people who make the decisions who say, okay, our team is going to decide, because they already did it, we're going to decide that if it's worth, keeping you alive or not. So we're going to play God, and if there is a God, and they'd probably be very cheeky about it and very cynical, right? The word, or facetious about it. We're going to play God. We're going to take your life because we feel that we can feel for you and feel how much pain you're going through, even if it's psychiatric. And you know what? We'll encourage you to donate your liver, right? And that way you can leave this world maybe in good karma by giving your fucking liver after, well, we help you kill yourself. I mean, that's just at least the language I'm hearing, knowing that there's a bunch of fucking idiots running this shit in the world now. Those will be without any type of medical review, and that we can probably pass that. That's all. That's where I'm going.
I wonder if the World Economic Forum and the writings of Klaus Schwab address this issue. I
Well, yeah.
wouldn't be surprised at all. If
Well,
they-
this is the thing. This is where it's coming from. That is one of the. They're all about that. The guy Harari, whatever, is.
yeah, no,
Yeah, like,
yeah.
and I showed you the transhumanism, the robot Bina, who is Rosenblatt's wife's robot, right? That's all about transhumanism, which is per se, anti-life, anti-birth, anti-womb, baby coming in through the portal of that. Yeah.
So do you think it's more of a coincidence that Canada will be number one of four?
Well, there you go.
And also, did you hear any debate in Parliament or
there you go.
on
Well,
this?
that's
Because
what.
I don't watch network news anymore. So
That's why, at least in this episode, we're kind of digging in. Even if we're not professional, this is just for the common folk. That's why we call it the show of the mundane. On the date, give a likes up or subscribe and share. We're just kind of picking through because these articles, even on the mainstream, went out, right? And this was early in
scroll down
January.
scroll down just to what.
Yeah.
So
So
look at the difference in the numbers. We're talking about 286 assisted death recipients provide life-saving organs for transplant to 837 patients
yep,
in the years up to including 2021. So
yep.
how do you get the number 10,000 right here at the related stories column on the left? More than 10,000 Canadians received a medically assisted death. That means very few were donating organs.
At that time.
Well,
Now,
2021
doctors in Canada, where medical assistance in dying Maid was decriminalized in 2016, right? In comparison to this date, performed almost half of the world's organ transplants after Maid for that period, 136. According to, so that's pretty significant if you ask me. You know, it's like medical assistance, but you know what? Half of the world, like this, that alone doesn't give me the full, but it says a lot. Even though it was discriminalized in 2016, it performed almost half of the freaking world, more than 10,000 Canadians. Okay, so you guys received that, but we also accounted for half of the world's, organ donation.
Actually, no, the correct number is 837. The 10,000
Yeah.
got the assisted suicide, but
Yeah.
only 2 to 9%.
Mm-hmm.
Those are numbers that affect how many donated,
Well,
or
many.
how many organs. Well,
But
8,
almost half of the world's organ transplant
right.
after Maid for that period, 136. Data from the Canadian Institute for Health Information
still a small number though.
confirms that this new source of transplant organs accounts for 6% of all transplants from deceased donors in Canada in 2021. Some transplants, like those for kidneys and livers, can be done with patients who are alive. That's true. It was rather proud that Canada has done so well in terms of organ donation.
Okay, but let's set this
With
in
more
context.
than 4,000 Canadians waiting for organ transplants, some of whom are dying, he says Canadian numbers show a strong move to turn death into a win-win. So what were you going to say?
No, I just wanted to mention the 4,000 number and also the possible numbers of China dwarf those of Canada. Just for a perspective, that's all.
Well, when they're saying worldwide, I'm going to assume maybe China's included in that, no?
No,
No?
these are Canadian numbers and the numbers from the 4 countries involved.
Right.
Because I don't think they do officially state-sanctioned assisted suicide in China, do they?
I'm not seeing that
I've
here right
never
now
heard
at
of
this
it.
point. Until then, until
No,
recently.
I mean voluntary is medically assisted death.
In Canada or
No, China.
In China, okay.
Yeah, I'm just saying,
I don't think you
yeah.
guys would have that. No?
So it's not in the study nor the calculation.
So until recently, only those who agreed to have a medically assisted death in hospital could donate their organs. It was easier and safer for surgeons for retrieval and transportation naturally. Right? So according to Health Canada data, 44.2% of Maid provisions in Canada took place at home. So once again, they just give you what you need and that's it. That's how they kind of. Once again, my thought is, hey, even if it sounds ethically cool, it's kind of openness and transparency. I'm just gonna, just breeze through it here.
Well, if you look at
But
the
this is
last
something
line,
that's coming on. There are all reasons why we wanted to have this paper out now and hope, and this is for our viewers that they who might not be able to read this, and hope every hospital and every jurisdiction take this as a starting point to write ethically sound protocols. So at the end of the day,
Wait a minute. On that point, that's only the starting stage, because think of, for example, if you've got family inheritance issues, you could it would play havoc with what happens. I mean, maybe some family members wants the father or mother to die,
that's it. That's
and
exactly
then they're going to be.
exactly.
It's just opens up a real
And,
can of
and
worms.
it seems a little bit more, once again, because the folks, even though they don't believe in God, they're playing God, right? And they're tinkering. Well, I'm not saying it's all bad. I'm just saying, at the end of the day, it's all about fucking money. It's not about saving lives. It's about saving lives under the cover that, hey, you know what? We can make a business out of this. And
Well,
you
also
know what?
you're lowering the pension payouts.
Exactly. Let's do with you, because listen to this. The Maid recipient is given medications in their home, right? So instead of like, it's basically a cleaner way to do it. Instead of like, let's say, bludgeoning, they say we'll give you to you instead of, so where's the, there's no guilt or there's no remorse. Like, even I can only imagine by association, and that's what we're seeing in this world today at large. Sort of by association, a bit of the collusion of, hey, let's okay. My thing is this: let's say somebody who's in working in the whole oath of medicine, just like we like to idolize on TV. Isn't that like a cop is a serial killer, right? Isn't that what Dexter's about and all that shit? So let's say you have somebody who's actually a doctor and or nurse, and their thing in such a way, because we don't call it ethics, they say, you know what? My job is just fucking killing people. And why? Because deep down inside, I love murdering people, and I love the fact that I can give someone easy dope to watch them. Like, right there, even though in society it's probably there, we're just legitimizing it to make it such. And therefore, I see we're going to probably have more unnecessary death as a result.
You're saying there's a problem with psychopathic doctors?
Well,
Because that's fiction. I mean, what about Kevorkian? Wasn't he compassionate?
that's the argument. Because Kevorkian existed, this is why we have this now, right? Just like Morgenthaler back in it could be argued back in the 70s when he had the clinics in Montreal. There were people who wanted to blow that shit up, right? But he survived. He had a peaceful death. He went, and now because of that, look where we are today,
If
right?
we use that as an analogy to abortion, we
Yep.
would see a Canada in 50 years where this is extremely routine. And let's say you had a bad weekend, but you're 30 years old with a job. Such a bad weekend that you just say, I'm going to throw in the towel.
Yep.
It'd be that routine.
Yeah, and
Wouldn't that be something?
to amplify it, here, let's make it more interesting. I'm thinking, hey, let's say I had a bad day in high school and the year's 2050, hey, your friends
Or you
will-
lost some money in the stock market?
not
Okay,
even, yeah,
you
you're
know,
thinking adult. I'm thinking, fuck the adult. They can jump off, yeah, start.
Oh,
what
I broke
about-
off with my girlfriend. I'm
Girlfriend.
so upset.
Yes, so you're even, maybe in grade 6, knowing what we know today, you've been bullied online. Call it a day. I'm gonna also give my kidneys, and also because I'm the wrong gender. You know what? Let's make it even. Like I could just imagine the kid born in the wrong gender decides to do that and says he's not happy with the gender. Then says, you know what? I'm gonna give it and call it a day. But tell you what, I still had nice legs. You could take my legs.
And here's another issue, the trivialization of death. For example, you can just out and out commit a murder, but the fact that you killed somebody would be trivialized compared to what it is like today, irrespective of whether or not you did it through Maid or not.
That's the whole. It's gonna be
What a
instant death and
monstrous
organs.
future that would be.
There you go.
By the way, how many movies do you
CTV.
a handful of other, maybe half a dozen movies Justin Timberlake was in the movie where he had a little watch on his hand, digital watch on his wrist, where it was ticking down to zero. That's kind of a variation on that, but it's not suicide. But Logan's Run would be the only one I can think of. Did you ever see Logan's Run, by the way?
Logan's Run, V are examples of that same type of trope where, hey, you know what? In V, people were floating up in the sky, blasting their asses off, right? I don't know if you remember
V. The alien?
V, yeah.
By the way, I wonder if we can look at Wikipedia or search the number of movies or the titles of the movies that involve assisted suicide.
I think they're
Can
way.
we come up with a list? Yeah.
Not just come up with a list, and here's the thing. Even if we're going to come up with a list, we know there are films that exist like that. There's nothing. That was
well, I guess
that was the Philadelphia story with Tom Hanks. Remember that with Denzel Washington?
That's cancer. Or, sorry,
HIV. Yeah, and
I didn't know suicide was involved.
Well, not assisted per se, but the guy dies. But I mean, films like that, regardless, they exist. And
I wonder if there are any variations that are yet to be explored, though, on that theme, creatively speaking. I mean, just.
Will new assisted death laws offer relief or go too far?
Only 1 in 3 people in Canada have access to the mental health care they need.
The only way to stop this is to kill myself.
And
oh my God!
unwelcome guests wreaking havoc.
He's about 40.
Let's see.
Decision. I've got to stop this. And the only way to stop this is to kill myself.
But before the overdose can kill him, he calls his wife and says goodbye. Panicked, she phones 911 and he's rushed to hospital to have his stomach pumped. And when you woke up, you had an interaction with the physician.
He said, "Why did you do this? Was this a call for help?" And I wanted to punch the guy. A cry for help? No, I wanted to die.
That was 2006. Since then, John has tried to kill himself again. After each suicide attempt, doctors and nurses revived him. That's what they're supposed to do when someone wants to end their life. But now some say that is about to change.
We're ready.
You ready to begin?
Yes.
At first, only Canadians like Ray Cole were allowed to have a medically assisted death. W5 was at his bedside in February 2022, when with the help of a doctor and his wife by his side, he started the drugs to end his life. He had terminal cancer with just months to live. Medical assistance in dying, or Maid, became legal for patients like him in 2016.
Got it.
I'm good to go.
Safe travels, my friend.
Goodbye, my friends. I love you guys.
5 years later, the law changed to include people with chronic illnesses like John Priddle. He wasn't dying, but qualified because he had an incurable physical illness with an advanced state of decline and intolerable suffering.
It would give me quite a bit of peace of mind to realize that it's not just an option, but medical assistance and die may be there if I think I need it.
If you need it.
At 81, John Scully's high blood pressure won't make him eligible for an assisted death, but his PTSD and depression soon will. Canada's Maid law is about to change again. In 2023, those with mental illnesses as a sole underlying condition will become eligible, and John says he'll be among the first in line to apply. A man who spent most of his life trying to stay alive in war zones is now pushing for his right to end it.
So, this is just a little preview, just to kind of get an idea. So this gentleman seems, I guess, within the near senior years, and this is a choice. So, the way we're seeing it here in this this particular show is that there seems to be some type of compassionate angle, if we must say. What are your thoughts? And as we have now, you did ask about the films of euthanasia. But what are your thoughts?
Sorry, I'm just.
You're just fascinated?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you asked, and so once again, euthanasia movies, movies about euthanasia. So it seems that there's a lot because there are more. Because if Hollywood could make it, they've done it, and then worldwide too. Garage, Boris Karloff, Before I Hang, 1940. I think actually, here we go. And as you see the films here, Garage, Johnny Got His Gun, 1971, How to Die in Oregon, 2011, and these are films about euthanasia. So I would say, yeah, there's a lot. I'm sure. Look, 1962, I Thank a Fool. So your thought was that, hey, guess what? This idea could be preconditioned based on programming or television or propaganda, such as, like this, Mercy or Murder, right? Robert Young, remember him? He was Marcus Welby. It was probably one of his last gigs. Kids don't know.
He's at
Fog
my
in
aunt's
August. Pardon?
He's at my aunt's wedding.
Yeah. And 2016, Fog in August. So, and this is just some of them, because as the way the